You awaken in a chill-laden air, darkness caressing you like invisible chains. Your heart pounds like war drums, each beat striking your chest and propelling you upright in panic. Dim light flickers, revealing an invisible scar etched upon your soul. A memory never formed, buried deep within ancient secrets. Your breath comes in ragged gasps, your lungs on the verge of collapse, every second screaming the same unanswered question: why am I in such pain? In that instant, you realize this suffering wasn't born by chance. It was woven from the decisions of long-dead ancestors, a twisted plot to keep bloodlines pure, a horror scripted before you ever drew your first breath. Beneath your fragile skin, inherited genes whisper curses. A curved spine, a protruding jaw, a shadowed spirit. You are the product of a merciless system where power trumped compassion, and your journey to unearth the truth has only just begun. Blood was their promise of power, but it became their silent executioner. Picture your DNA as a living fresco, once painted in riotous, kaleidoscopic hues. Emerald immunity, sapphire strength, ruby resilience, now traced over and over until every pigment bleeds into a uniform grey. Europe's grandest houses built their empires on this monochrome mantra. Cousin to cousin, niece to uncle, each union another deliberate knot in a noose tightening around their future. They didn't stumble into inbreeding. They pursued it like a sacred rite. They murmured of ancestral purity and divine right, convinced that narrowing their blood would elevate them to untouchable gods. But with every repeated thread, the tapestry unraveled. Hidden faults, recessive whispers in the genomic dark, woke up one by one, their lethality amplified behind palace walls. Ballroom floors became battlegrounds. Epileptic seizures tore through courtly dance like lightning storms, leaving nobles frozen in horror. Immune systems collapsed like sandcastles at high tide. Something as simple as a chill in the air could send a princess into weeks of fevered delirium. Anxiety prowled the gilded corridors, a feral beast gnawing at royal minds. Even laughter turned hollow, an echo in vast, ornate chambers where trust was as brittle as their bones. The notorious Habsburg jaw cracked open more than mouths. It exposed a lineage's rotten core. Teeth ground in agony, speech stuttered in dread, but these deformities were only the overture. Beneath the skin lay a minefield of psychological terrors. Depression tunneled through hearts like a silent drill, phobias chained every step, and brilliance dimmed under a genetic haze so thick it turned prophets into prisoners of their own minds. Each afflicted heir, each hushed tragedy, was another footnote in a manifesto of arrogance. They sacrificed human flesh on the altar of legacy, unaware that legacy itself had become a carcass, bleeding its own promise. Long before the beheading blocks and revolution's fires, the dynasty was already dying from within. So ask yourself, what price are you willing to pay when you worship your own reflection? When you seal your fate in your own blood? This is the unraveling of their grand design, the prelude to centuries of sorrow, where ambition's canvas went up in ash, and every royal throne became a mausoleum for dreams unfulfilled. And yet somewhere in those ruins, a lesson pulses with life, that true power belongs not to the pure of blood, but to the brave of heart. 1634, Vienna, Maria Anna's first breath. The cradle rocks beneath gilded vaults, but no lullaby soothes the hush of the Hofburg Palace. Torches gutter along stone arches, their flames trembling as if frightened by what they illuminate. A midwife's hands, pale as winter moonlight, hover over the newborn's fragile form. In that moment, Maria Anna is more omen than infant. Her spine arches like a snapped violin bow, her chin thrust forward in silent accusation, and every inhale escapes her in a rasp of resistance, as though she's been born into battle. Swaddled in the softest silk, she should be swaddled in peace, but the fabric can't muffle the rasp of her first cries. Each breath is a full-throttle struggle, ribs rattling, muscles quivering, lungs flaring like dying embers, desperate for oxygen. The court physicians, cloaked in midnight black robes trimmed with gold, lean close behind lacquered fans. Their eyes glint with morbid fascination. They see not a child, but a living relic of vows sealed by ancestors long gone, a monument to secrets whispered behind heavy oak doors. As she grows, the palace's marble corridors become her labyrinth. Cold stone against tender souls, every footstep a reminder of how out of place she is. Portraits of empresses and dukes line the walls, their painted eyes hollow, judging. Outside, cousins chase golden butterflies through sunlit gardens. Maria Anna retreats to the palace library, fingertips tracing spines of forbidden tomes. There, in inked worlds of distant forests and fearless heroines, she tastes a freedom her body will never know. Yet every page turned brings a pang of exile. Her mind voyages across star-lit realms, while her body is shackled to inherited agony. Attendants hoist her from chamber to chamber, physicians scribble measurements of bent vertebrae and labored swallows in leather-bound ledgers. No one dares speak the name of the poison coursing through her blood. The palace walls hold that secret in their silent mortar. Here begins Maria Anna's legend, not as a pale relic in a velvet cradle, but as a fierce spark of defiance, etched in bone and spirit, refusing to be extinguished by a dynasty's darkest legacy. 1479, Castile, Joanna's obsession unbound. A moonlit cradle rocks in the Alhambra's inner courtyard, torchlight dancing across white marble pillars. From her first gasp, Joanna inhales more than air. She draws in the weight of kingdoms. Born to Isabella and Ferdinand, two monarchs who wield treaties like swords, her fate is etched in ink before her umbilical cord is cut. Incense-laden breezes carry the muffled chants of chaplains and the low hum of advisors, already calculating her value in dynastic chess. As a child, Joanna learns early that smiles are weapons and tears betray weakness. In grand halls hung with tapestries of Granada's conquest, she rehearses curtsies beneath her mother's stern gaze. Lessons in Latin and theology fill her days, but at night she scribbles secret poems in the margins of prayer books. Verses about a love untouched by politics, a devotion beyond duty. At 15, she is wed to Philip the Handsome, the Burgundian prince whose icy detachment stings sharper than any court dagger. Their first encounter is framed by cathedral arches and perfumed air, yet his eyes glide past her as though she were a decorative fan. Whispers of his liaisons with foreign ladies drift through palace corridors. Each rumor lands in Joanna's heart like a pebble dropped in still water, sending ripples of despair. When Philip dies in 1506, Joanna's grief alchemizes into something fierce and uncontainable. She dons widow's weeds of deepest black and follows his sealed coffin on a candlelit pilgrimage from Burgos to Madrid, cradling the brass handles as though they might pulse with his last heartbeat. Each night she presses her lips to the coffin's chill wood, whispering, "Stay with me," as embers of madness ignite in her veins. Court gossip brands her the Mad Queen, but in her mind lies a truer rebellion, a vision of a realm where loyalty isn't currency and love isn't dictated by bloodlines. Locked away in Tordesillas' convent for 46 years, she endures stone walls and hushed rumors, yet inside her cell blooms a garden of fierce devotion. In the hush before dawn, her voice rises in whispered hymns, a candle flame flickering defiantly against darkness, proof that even the cruelest cage cannot smother a heart consumed by love. 1651, Madrid, Margaret Teresa's silent revolution. A cradle of velvet and gold in the Alcazar, yet the air tastes of dread. Margaret Teresa arrives under chimes of celebration and already feels the weight of destinies pressing on her tiny shoulders. By age 5, she moves like a marionette beneath crystal chandeliers, every gesture rehearsed to perfection. Her portrait by Velázquez captures that distant gaze, eyes too solemn for a child, lips pressed into a line of quiet endurance. At 12, she is betrothed to her uncle, the Holy Roman Emperor, an arrangement hailed as triumph, yet sealing her fate. The wedding gown drapes over fragility. Her trembling hands clutch lace she cannot feel. In the echoing basilica, vows bind more than hearts. They bind genetics, stoking the latent storm in her bloodstream. Pregnancy comes too early and too often. Each child conceived becomes a gamble with death. A daughter who lives only weeks, a son stillborn, a son who carries her own keening heart in his labored breath. Court physicians record every seizure, every gasp. It reads like a ledger of suffering. Yet in stolen moments beneath moonlight, Margaret Teresa dares a silent rebellion. She hums lullabies of a world without pedigree, where lineage is woven from love, not blood. In her fragile body, compassion finds its fiercest voice, each whispered note a revolution against the dynasty's iron code. Her final breath in 1666 steals the world's air and truthfully writes her epitaph, not as a trophy of empire, but as a testament that even the most delicate spirit can roar against the darkest legacy. 1601, Madrid. Anna of Austria's gilded exile, a cradle of brocade and incense in the Alcazar. Yet Anna's first breath tastes of expectation and dread. Born with the Habsburg jaw already whispering her fate, she learns early that beauty and burden can wear the same crown. At 14, she departs Spain for France, steam rising from the port as her ship cleaves the grey Seine. Paris greets her with fanfare, but the foreign tongue bites her tongue, and every curtsy feels like another lock on her spirit. Married to Louis XIII, she becomes queen by protocol, but an exile in her own heart. The palace corridors echo with her measured steps, yet inside anxiety coils like a serpent, tightening with each whispered court intrigue. Pregnancy arrives as both salvation and sentence. Her first son, a beacon of hope, brings relief, yet Anna's fragile body and mind tremble beneath the weight of duty. Bloodletting and poultices offer no comfort. Only prayer and hushed confession become her sanctuary. When Louis XIV is born, the court exhales. But Anna's joy is tinged with fear, knowing the cycle will repeat. Her second son secures the throne, yet every cradle rocked becomes a reminder. In this dynasty, motherhood is both triumph and sacrifice. In the quiet of her chapel, Anna threads her resilience into silent hymns. Though Habsburg blood courses through her veins, it is her faith and the fierce love for her children that forges her true legacy. A queen who bore both burden and blessing, and whose whispered prayers outlasted empire and curse. 1755, Vienna, 1770, Versailles, Marie Antoinette's crown of thorns. A cradle of silk and candlelight in Schönbrunn Palace, yet from her first breath, Marie Antoinette inhales the weight of dynasties. Born into Habsburg grandeur, her tiny jaw already whispers the family's genetic secret. At 14, she is shipped off to Versailles, an odyssey of gilded carriages and courtiers' stares. The Hall of Mirrors glitters like a trap. Each reflection reminds her how far she is from home. French becomes a foreign song on her lips, and every curtsy tightens the noose of expectation. Her marriage to Louis XVI should have been a fairy tale, but from the start, her body rebels. Months of searing menstrual pain and phantom tremors leave her hollowed out and afraid. Court physicians bleed her under chandeliers. Poultices stain her chemise, yet no remedy soothes the ache that isn't just physical. Pregnancies come like storm clouds, each one a gamble with mortality. The birth of Marie Thérèse brings relief, a single shaft of light in the court's shadow. But subsequent miscarriages shred her resolve. Grief coils in her chest, a viper she cannot escape. Whispers swirl that the queen is frivolous, uncaring. Yet no one sees her tears behind the powdered mask. As revolution's thunder gathers, Marie Antoinette becomes both scapegoat and martyr. She moves from palace to prison cell, her final days a blur of cold stone and empty plate. In her last early morning, the scaffold awaits. Not for a queen, but for the broken daughter of a dynasty's hubris. Her legacy is etched in two tragedies, the guillotine's blade and the silent genetic chains that haunted her veins. Marie Antoinette didn't simply lose a crown, she embodied the cost of a lineage that worshipped purity over people. 1670s, Madrid, the forgotten Infanta's candles. Gutter in the Alcazar's labyrinthine halls as a new brood of princesses arrives, each more fragile than the last. They are the daughters and nieces of Charles II, born under a name already stained by decades of cousin marriages. Their cradle songs drown beneath the steady drip of palace gossip. Some cannot walk, others babble incoherently, all bear that telltale jut of jaw and the hollow slump of spine. Maria Margherita never spoke unassisted until age 7. Her laughter, when it came, was a brittle echo. Maria Teresa's limbs trembled so severely that her nursemaids bound her wrists nightly, praying the ropes would bring stillness. Another Infanta's seizures racked her in the grand ballroom, turning courtly dances into scenes of horror. And yet, marriage negotiations pressed on. foreign courts sent envoys clutching medical dossiers instead of love letters, assessing which broken girl might still produce heirs. These children grew up warded by teams of physicians and priests, their days measured in ledgers of deformities. Each portrait commissioned by the crown captured a flicker of life, but also a testament to genetic collapse. They were not brides, not painters' muses, but living case studies, footnotes in the kingdom's ledger, valued only for their capacity to endure another pregnancy or quietly perish. When the last infantar slipped away, eyes closed beneath lace veils, the court exhaled relief. Spain's Habsburg line teetered on extinction, not from war or plague, but from a legacy written in genes. Their silent passage would trigger the War of Spanish Succession, yet the true conflict lay deeper, a final reckoning with centuries of power traded for purity. This chapter closes on empty cradles and ornate tombs, a solemn reminder that ambition untempered by compassion can hollow even the mightiest dynasty. The stage is set now to uncover the science behind the curse, and to learn why the tapestry of human life must remain rich in every hue. Beneath the glitter of thrones and crowns lies an invisible force, no less destructive than any blade, the map of our own DNA. When we strip away the facade of power, the Habsburg curse reveals itself as a brutal symphony of psychology, society, and ambition, hidden recessive genes, the silent assassins. In a diverse population, harmful recessive genes are like rare black pearls, almost never seen because healthy dominant genes mask them. But when bloodlines shrink to cousins and uncles, those pearls pile up with nowhere to hide. From immune defenses to digestive enzymes, every system can become corrupted by genetic typos once thought harmless. That's why a princess might fall victim to chronic pneumonia and assume it's just a winter illness, when in fact her immune system was decommissioned before birth. Psychic ghosts in the Hall of Mirrors. The grander the palace, the tighter the mental glass cage for its queen. Depression, anxiety, and paranoia cease to be personal ailments and become the royal court's brand. Princesses must smile on cue, perform before the masses, even as oceans of sorrow churn within. When these symptoms are stamped madness instead of illness, they lose their agency, their dignity, and their humanity. They become nothing more than court curiosities, power and poison, medicine as a double-edged sword. Instead of recognizing genetic causes, the royal physicians, feather-capped and cloaked, turned to bloodletting, poultices, and charms, forcing queens to endure one pregnancy after another. Here, medicine wasn't about healing lives, but about perpetuating a blood-soaked dynasty. A political game that reduced women to genetic slaves. Historical fallout, from private tragedy to continental upheaval. Charles II died childless and voiceless. Spain collapsed into the War of the Spanish Succession. Marie Antoinette was deposed and scapegoated, branded the woman who said, "Let them eat cake," though she never did. These events stem from centuries of genetic collapse, yet history only remembers political maneuvers, rarely tracing the poisoned blood that seeded such disasters. When people become instruments, history becomes theater, devoid of conscience. Modern medical lessons, genetics meets ethics. The 21st century's CRISPR revolution holds promise to cure hereditary diseases, and also the chilling power to design humans for personal or ideological gain. If we ignore the Habsburg lesson, we risk repeating the same mistake, editing out unwanted traits only to unleash new horrors on our gene pool. Medical ethics must stay tethered to the principle of do no harm, resisting every temptation to sacrifice human diversity for the illusion of perfection. A contemporary mirror, genetic isolation today. Communities that still practice close-kin marriage face the same genetic pressures once embraced by royalty. We cannot condemn past queens without warning today's societies. Genetic diversity is not merely a privilege, but a lifeline. It prevents infertility, rare diseases, and secures the health of future generations. Human value beyond DNA biology can explain Maria Anna's spasms or Marie Antoinette's anemia, but it cannot capture Maria Anna's thirst for freedom, Joanna's obsessive love, or Margaret Teresa's quiet hope. Those transcendent longings remind us that every person deserves to author their own story, not be scripted by a chain of nucleotides, breaking the cycle from dark memory to dawn of hope. As we stand at the crossroads of biotechnology, tradition, and ethics, let the Habsburg curse challenge us. The true test: do we dare to put compassion over ambition, responsibility above power, and let go of any practice that imprisons future generations in genetic chains? If we do not, we will be the authors of the next grim chapter in humanity's legacy.